All right, last little thing before we go. Wrote this great article over the weekend. And it was about the college hoops programs that have essentially won the offseason so far. And where it kind of stemmed from was very simply this. Is that when this whole pandemic started, right, there was like a week or two where we were all just running around with our chickens with our head cut off and how do I work from home and I should probably shower before 3 p.m. and am I going to work out from home and how do I do this and what is Zoom? And then like at some point, like we as, normal people, if you will, and I know many of you are still going to work, whether you're police, firefighters, doctors, nurses, shout out to all you guys that are going out there every day and working your butts off for us. But for those of us that were stuck at home, there was kind of this lull, and then it was like, okay, like if we don't want to get fired, like we kind of got to get our butts in gear, you know what I mean? And so I bring all this up for a very simple reason. It's because I really kind of noticed the same thing was going on in college hoops. There were some programs that just a week or two in realized, well, we can sit around and twiddle our thumbs, or we can go make the most out of this opportunity and do everything we can to position ourselves for the 2020 season, 2021, and beyond. And so I wrote a great article, and I wanted to give credit to those teams that have had a great offseason, okay? Teams that have taken bad circumstances and said, you know what, life's got to go on. We're trying to win games. Let's make our program better. And so I think I came up with 12 teams, and I'll try to be quick here because this podcast is already going long, but here goes. First team, University of Kentucky. Wrote an article about it, but John Calipari was the one-and-done guru, and I think over the last 2 or so years, he's realized if I don't jump into this transfer world, I'm doing myself a disservice. I'm doing my program a disservice, and my job is to do what's best for the University of Kentucky, not do what I believe is right or wrong. Or like I need to be in this transfer thing. And so I give Calipari so much credit. As we all know, they lost all 5 of their starters. They only have one player coming back who played serious minutes. That's Keon Brooks. And he has a number 1 ranked recruiting class coming in from high school, but he offset it with some real talent in the transfer market. You guys know how I feel about Olivier Sarr. I think he's a stud. I think he's a rock star. As I said on the last episode, talked to a coach who faced him, said he was the most skilled big man that we faced all year. So Kentucky went and got that guy, and I believe that he will be eligible by the time the season starts. They also get a grad transfer point guard in Davian Mintz, can play on the ball, can play off the ball, but just a key piece for a young backcourt that is going to need another guy. And finally, Jacob Toppin. I'm telling you this, I made a few phone calls on Jacob Toppin. People like that kid, man. And I know he didn't have a great freshman year at Rhode Island, and he's going to be compared to his brother, friend of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Obi Toppin. But I talked to some coaches in the A-10. They think that kid is a future NBA player. Now, it might be after 2 or 3 years at Kentucky, but they think he's a future NBA player. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. When he gets into that Kentucky strength and conditioning program, they think he's an NBA-type player. Second team, for the exact opposite reason of Kentucky. By the way, I should mention with Kentucky, Jayden Hardy, number 1 shooting guard, Paolo Banchero, number 1 power forward. I think he's the number 1 player in this class. Both appear to be Kentucky lean. So not only has Kentucky gotten the grad transfers that they want, they've done a good job with the high school players for 2021 as well. Second team, Michigan State. Michigan State's the opposite. Michigan State might be the only team that I can think of. I don't think they were involved with a single transfer this entire offseason. But the reason they're winners is because they have taken this time to get ahead on future classes of high school basketball players. The most notable one, Imani Bates. I spent a whole episode talking about Imani Bates a few weeks ago. Imani Bates is, by some belief, he is the best high school prospect since LeBron. Now the question is, will he ever play college basketball? That's another conversation for another day. But number 1 player in America, number 1 high school player, commits on national TV on SportsCenter to your program. That's good work by Michigan State. Shout out to you, Tom Izzo. And oh, by the way, they got a commitment from a kid named Max Christie, one of the top high school players in the class of 2021 last week as well. And I'll add this. For all the talk about Imani Bates not playing college basketball, the exact opposite could be true as well. Imani Bates could actually reclassify and play in the high school class of 2021, graduate, and then come play at Michigan State for a year. That could especially be true, as I said, if name, image, likeness comes in and he can make a little bit of money while he's on campus. I would still bet against him playing college basketball, but it's possible. Either way, when you get 2 top 10 commits in 2 different classes, I think it's a major step in the right direction. Number 3, Arizona. How about them Wildcats? Okay, so here's the deal with Arizona. They are a lot like Kentucky. They lost their top 6 scorers off last year's team, 3 one-and-done high school players that came in that were freshmen last year, and then 3 seniors. Unlike Kentucky, they did not have the number 1 ranked recruiting class to help set them up. They only had 2 high school players committed prior to the season ending on March 10th. So what does Sean Miller do? As I said in the article, he became college basketball's pit bull. He was Mr. Worldwide. He went and signed a bunch of really good international players. And I'll tell you this, they signed a wing from Serbia. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Lithuania. But I am told that they believe that if this kid played high school basketball here in the United States, that he is the equivalent of a McDonald's All-American player, that he could be a one-and-done next year and he can play in the NBA. They also got a forward named Daniel Bacho from France. They got a point guard named Kerr Krissa, named after Steve Kerr, who ironically played at Arizona. They signed 5 international players in the spring. Only one of them actually even played in the United States last year. And they ended up with a top 10 recruiting class. So from 2 high school players to a top 10 class, shout out to Sean Miller, because I think he did a really good job, all things considered. Staying in the Pac-12, I don't think anybody realizes how good this team has done. USC signed 5 transfers this offseason. 3 of them are grad transfers. All of them average double figures at their last spot. Now, are any of them going to be stars? No. But USC has a good returning core, starting point guard Ethan Anderson, Isaiah Mobley, Evan Mobley, who I just mentioned a minute ago, turned down the G League Pathway program. I think USC is a tournament team again, but 5 transfers, including 3 grad transfers, all average double figures. A 4th transfer is a kid named Josh Morgan, legit 7-footer. People think he's good enough to play in the NBA. He will sit out next year. All right, let's keep going. Alabama. I talked about them on the last episode. I'm not going to spend too much time, but Alabama has completely revamped their roster. They got who they believe was the number 1 grad transfer on the market, Jordan Bruner, a big guy. They got Josh Primo, top 35 guard in America, top 35 prospect, 5-star prospect. They got another kid to reclassify last week. They got a McDonald's or JUCO All-American named Keon Ellis. And they're looking really good. And, oh, by the way, Herb Jones, who was really good for them last year, has announced he'll come back. Now, we're still waiting on John Petty, but there's a lot of hype with this Alabama team. I saw Jeff Goodman has them winning the SEC next year. I think that's a little presumptuous. If Kentucky has Olivier Sarr, I like them. I think I still like Tennessee ahead of Kentucky, but the point does not change that Alabama really reloaded their roster this offseason. I'm excited to see him. Javon Quinterly, their point guard. I'm excited to see him, but shout out to Nate Oates. That team is doing work. Speaking of doing work, Arkansas, talked about him a ton, but look, no one has mastered this transfer thing quite like Eric Musselman, and he's going to keep doing it. 3 grad transfers. They all fit a need. Vance Jackson, the big forward, athletic, skilled, can score all over the court. Jalen Tate, a big 6'6" point guard. And then Justin Smith, who was actually the leading scorer at Indiana last year. And Arkansas just looks like a completely different team. We talked about it a ton. They don't have a single player that's taller than 6'6" on the roster. Or last season they didn't have a player taller than 6'6" in their starting lineup. I should have said on their roster, but in their starting lineup. Now, I mean, they're going to look like an NBA team when they walk in the gym. 6'7", 6'6" point guard, 6'9". They have a kid that's 7'3". They're going to be a really, really interesting team to watch. Next team, arguably the most controversial team that I have on this list, Oklahoma State. So some of you are like, you cannot put Oklahoma State on this list. You're an idiot. And I told my wife, please don't call me an idiot. That's me. No, I'm just kidding. She didn't really pay attention to my list at all. But Oklahoma State, people are saying, how can you put them on the list? They got a 1-year postseason ban. They have the number 1 high school player in America coming in. How can you argue that they had a good offseason? Well, it's because considering that they did get a 1-year postseason ban, Mike Boynton, friend of the Aaron Torres podcast, did about as good of a job as anyone could have possibly done to keep things together, to keep the team intact. 1, they brought back Cade Cunningham. But 2, and I think this is bigger, they basically brought back the rest of the roster. And that might not mean much to you. But I'm telling you, this could have decimated this program. Remember, these players are allowed to transfer without sitting out. They could have been decimated. They could have lost 5, 6, 7, 8 players and not been able to replace them. And really outside of one impact player, everybody decided to come back. Everyone decided to be part of what they're doing. And I think they were a winner. I really do. Next team. I'll try to be quick here as I'm going long. My voice is starting to crack. Louisville. Louisville fans think I hate them. I really don't. I actually like Chris Mack. I think he's really good. And he's had a pretty good offseason. Look, they lost 1 player to the draft they were not necessarily expecting, although I don't think they were really surprised, named Jay Scrubb, JUCO All-American, never ended up on campus. But they get 2 grad transfers, Charles Miniland, who I think is going to be good, Carlick Jones, who averaged 20 a game at a small school. And more than anything, they got started on the class of 2021 as well. They currently have the number 2 class in the country. They got a JUCO kid named L. Ellis, who actually committed over UConn. They got another point guard named Bobby Pettiford. So I think it was a really, really, really good class. I should mention, by the way, USC, I didn't even give them credit for this. They got 3 commitments in the class of 2021 already. They currently have the number 1 class in the country. 2 of them have come post-pandemic. So shout out to the USC staff. They are doing major, major, major work. 2 commitments ranked in the top 100 to USC. As we start to wrap up here, I mentioned Louisville. I mentioned Oklahoma State. How about Texas Tech? We know the deal. Chris Beard, rock star. They, too, lost some players that they weren't expecting. Joel Ntombwe, who's John Kaminga's brother, appears to be going pro. Davide Moretti, there was talk that he could skip his senior year to stay in Italy. He has done that. But 3 transfers, Marcus Santos Silva, Mac McClung, and Jamarius Burton, who came from Wichita. All 3 are really good players. Santos Silva will be eligible this year. We'll see on McClung. But Texas Tech doing work. As we start to wrap, I do want to give some credit to some of the mid-majors. I got 2 of them on this list. George Washington. George Washington, if my math was correct, got 7 commitments over the course of this offseason, 3 transfers, all from high major programs, including James Bishop, who played at LSU last year, Ricky Lindo, who played at Maryland last year. I think both those guys are going to be really good at that program, which is in the A-10. They also got a commitment, how about this, from a kid from New Zealand who recently was added to the Rivals database, is considered a 4-star prospect, top 100 prospect in the junior class, could go down as the best recruit in program history. As I start to wrap up here, Howard, 2 words, McCourt Maker. Even if he doesn't come to campus, it is a huge PR win. Great for the school, great for the basketball program, great for college basketball, frankly. Excited to see him if he actually plays. Even if he doesn't, I think it's a good thing for Howard. And as I wrap here, Memphis, for all the reasons that I said on last episode, they needed a win. They got one with Moussa Cisse. The 2 transfers that they have are really good, and I actually really like that team coming in. So shout out to the teams that won the offseason according to AT in no particular order: Kentucky, Michigan State, Arizona, USC, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Louisville, Texas Tech, George Washington, Howard, and Memphis.